Hello, hello! Welcome to the reboot of Vest Top 5. I haven't been here in a while, so we're just rebooting it. It's the same shitty show with the same shitty content and a lack of viewership. It's all the same.
I don't know if you got the memo.
What?
You're gonna be a woman.
I want to be a woman?
Yeah.
Do I get like a double D breast implants or no?
No.
Damn it.
You're gonna be Vest Gal.
Vest Gal.
Yeah.
So welcome to Vest Gal. Vest Top Gal 5. So there's a lot of movie trends that are very popular now. You may be aware of some of them. I'm aware of all of them. I see a lot of movies and I get annoyed by some of them. Not so much annoyed by them, but annoyed by the fact that they're overused. And you'll get what I mean once I get into the list. So number 5, jump scares. I know everyone knows about jump scares. If you don't, jump scares are your typical thing that happens in horror movies where a character is walking down a dark hallway and she hears an ominous sound and she thinks it's a killer, but no, it's her friend who's touching her on the shoulder, and then the music goes boom, and you're like, fuck! And you jump not because it's scary, it's because the noise that goes along with it scared you, and I find it very cheap. However, not all jump scares are equal. There are some jump scares that are good. You know, when you have the actual killer attacking you, or a shark comes and attacks the person, whatever it is, if it lends itself to the story and if it's necessary and done at a minimum, it's okay. But I see it a lot in movies like Curse of La Llorona or The Conjuring. Even though The Conjuring is a good movie, it also has those type of jump scares that aren't very good. Movies also like The Nun and all those movies that every 10 minutes you'll have a character not doing much, so we have to have something scary happen and it's a jump scare. So I wish if they put this to a minimum and utilize it in a way that lends itself to the story, I'd be okay with it. But if it's just done to scare people because nothing's going on in the scene, then that's annoying. That's what I don't like. That's a movie trend that I can do without, or if they can do it to a minimum. Number 4, most movies since the year 2002 have been progressively been shot on digital. Film is kind of going the way of the horse. It's becoming kind of obsolete, you know. You can blame George Lucas for this. He was the first pioneer who started shooting movies with film and digital. I think the first movie was Phantom Menace, and then Attack of the Clones became the first fully digital film. I believe it was shot on the Red, and one of the first early Red cameras. And ever since then, you had a bunch of people trying to imitate that. Some were successful, some weren't. I even had Tommy Wiseau doing that at one point, trying to shoot film and digital, but he didn't know what the hell he was doing. But we're glad he kind of did that because it lent itself to that kind of shitty movie that I love. Then you had people who really did not know how to utilize digital cameras. They thought all digital cameras were the same. And you had movies like Collateral, Miami Vice, which were, and even 28 Days Later, that were shot with digital cameras or DV cameras that weren't exactly, you know, that great. But we've come a long way, and now almost 90% of movies are shot digitally. And I'm not to say that digital is a bad thing. You know, most digital movies, actually almost all of them, look great. And in post-production, they typically work their asses off to make them look even better, trying to make them look like 35mm, which is kind of interesting because an oxymoron, because if they want to make it look like 35mm, they can just shoot with film. But I get it, it's a cost-effective thing. Digital is a lot cheaper. You know, all you need is an SD card or the cloud. You don't really need to carry a bunch of film, which film deteriorates and, you know, gets scratches and smudges over time, so it makes sense to shoot more on digital. My problem with this movie trend is that there should be a balance of both film and digital. There's some movies that look better when they're shot on film. Like, I'll give you an example, Hateful Eight looks amazing the way it was shot on 70mm. If that movie was shot on digital, I don't know if it would have looked as good. They probably would have to work twice as hard to get the look of that type of film. And the thing with film, there's actually more information. There's more megapixels in a 70mm and a 35mm versus your typical digital. The thing with digital also, it lends itself into the effects. Most visual effects in your movies like Avengers Endgame, not only is the movie shot digitally, but the effects, which all the visual effects for the most part are done digitally, they're rendered in 2K. So when that eventually gets released on something like a 4K, it's not gonna pop like a movie like, let's say, Grease, which was released on 4K and it looks amazing because it was shot on 35mm, there's no visual effects, and everything looks great on film. My argument here is that there should be a balance. Certain things should be shot on film. Like if it's a period piece, if it's a movie that takes place in a particular time, or a movie that has a specific subject matter, I think it should be shot on film. And since most people who are about the age of 30 something and up have learned shooting on film, they should be also teaching kids in film school to use both mediums, not just digital. And you have, a lot of directors who like to use it, Tarantino, Patty Jenkins, Christopher Nolan, I believe also Jordan Peele. These are people who actually care about the medium, and I think it will be around, but I would love to see more of it and less of digital. Number 3, shared universes. What's shared universes? So Marvel's very popular at this. Marvel has managed to combine so many superhero movies into one big universe. Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Black Widow, all these characters and all their films are within one shared universe. Thing is, just because Marvel did a great job at it does not mean that every other studio that tries to imitate it is going to succeed. A lot of movies out there have tried doing it and failed even in the first movie. Perfect example is The Mummy, released in 2017, Dark Universe. It was supposed to bring all the Universal monsters together, and this is not the first time they did it. They tried doing it with Dracula Untold and failed. They tried doing it before that with The Wolfman and failed. And they're going to do it again in a smaller scale by Blumhouse, and hopefully that will work for them. But what I'm getting at is that make a good movie. Just make a good movie. It doesn't matter, if it's going to be a shared universe or not. If it's successful and it lends itself to tell more stories and bring other characters, then great. But don't force it. And that's the problem with these movies. Like, I love the James Bond movies, and Spectre, which was terrible, tried bringing all those films together. When in the past, all the other Bond movies were just individual adventures like Indiana Jones. If it's not organic, if you're just forcing it because it's the trendy thing that everyone else is doing in Hollywood, then it just seems cheap and it seems inconsistent and a bit dishonest as a storyteller. DC also is doing the same thing, but they're trying to also separate from that. They're trying to do other individual stories. And I commend them for doing that because they tried very hard to copy the Marvel route of doing the shared universe. Didn't work. The only two I can think of that have been successful is Marvel and to a certain extent the Conjuring universe. Even though most of those movies aren't very good, people still flock to see them and they make a ton of money. I hate the fact that if I'm going to sit watching a particular horror movie and I don't know what's going on, someone says, well, you haven't seen the 14th film in the 50-year saga of movies. You have to watch this particular one. No, like, even Godzilla, there's how many movies? 20-something movies in the Godzilla universe? And if I feel like watching Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, I don't necessarily have to watch part 1. Or if I watch King Kong vs. Godzilla, I don't have to watch any of them. They're just individual stories. So it's not so much that I'm against mini films in a particular franchise, it's more the fact that they're all united. Because if, like, again, with the Bond movies, if I want to watch Quantum of Solace, I kind of have to watch Casino Royale to understand it. It doesn't stand on its own. Number 2, this is a trend that I know a lot of people are going to get upset because this is probably the most successful thing out there, and I just mentioned it right now. Superhero movies. I like them. I enjoy them. They're great. They've actually been good for the past 10 years. Since Iron Man came out and Dark Knight, you've had all these great movies. There's been some clunkers here and there, Batman v Superman, but it's the dominating thing right now. It's the most coolest thing now. I feel it's gonna go the way of the Western in the 1950s. If you don't know what I'm talking about, since the dawn of cinema, one of the first movies was a Western, and it was extremely popular to make Westerns, not just in movies, but in TV, plays. Everyone liked Westerns. And they started slowly dying out by the late 50s, especially in the 60s, until it had a resurgence with the spaghetti Westerns. But eventually, no one really cares about the genre anymore. There's just too many of those movies, and most of the people who like those movies are dead. There are some people, weirdos like me, who enjoy Westerns. I grew up watching them with my old man, so I like them. But I'm using this comparison with superhero movies that eventually, not yet, maybe in 20 years' time, people are gonna get tired of them. They're just gonna go the way of the Western. But there's just too many of them at the moment, and I would love, even though there are a lot of other original movies, which are mostly independent films, I would like to see bigger budget films of equal size, just original stories up on the screen, not just superhero films. I hate the fact that when you go to see what's in theaters, movie phone. I don't want to use this movie phone, but if you go on Rotten Tomatoes or any of these sites and check what's the show times, you see Shazam, Spider-Man Far From Home, and it's all like, one after another, and right down the bottom of the list, you have Midsommar, the horror movie that just came out. And so it's like, it'd be good if they had a balance. Number one is the biggest trend. This is the one that's like, it goes almost hand in hand with the superhero thing. Reboots / remakes / sequels. All of these things, I get it. As a studio, you have an IP, you have an existing property, and you want to make money off of it, so I get it. You have to make it bankable. Why create a new idea when you can just go back into the vault and take out a bunch of franchises to compete with other studios that are doing the same? I get it. But it'd be great if you as a studio also took some risks. That's why I say it's hard to think that today something like a Jaws or a Star Wars would ever happen. Because these were times where directors would get a small little film and studios would be interested in financing a bigger movie. In the case of Spielberg, he did Duel and they got a chance to do Jaws. In the case, well, actually not Duel, it would be part of Sugar Land Express. Then in the case of George Lucas, he did, American Graffiti and got a chance eventually to do Star Wars. But now it's more like you do something like Training Day and that will just get you to do something like Suicide Squad. Or if you do Safety Not Guaranteed, that will get you a Jurassic World. Basically, a chance to direct a franchise, a reboot, or a remake. And most directors now are guns for hire to make these kinds of movies. They're not really sharing their vision. They're kind of restrained. And as a studio, I get that you're trying to restrain them so you can have a success, but it seems more like a product. That's why you get really bad movies like Jurassic World 2, Fallen Kingdom, or Amazing Spider-Man 2. They feel like products rather than movies. And they don't feel like good movies that are necessarily worth retelling a story that's been told before. When you have good remakes like The Fly or Psycho, I'm kidding, Psycho's terrible, it's a terrible sequel or remake. But if you have one that's good, and it's necessary, then great. But don't do something like RoboCop, which was okay, but there's no need to tell that story. You just did it because you wanted to make money. So that's the thing. Hopefully you guys agree with it. If you don't, that's fine. Let me know down in the comment section down below what trend is occurring now in movies that you can't stand or that you would like either to be minimized or just completely disappear. I'm Vestgal. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with all your friends, and let me know what other topics you would want me to talk about here on Vest Top 5. Anyway guys, until next time, bye.